First, I want to say you couldn't have chosen a better person to be sitting in this seat because I don't know if there's any bigger fans than I am of yours. I'm such a fan. And I got to get something out of my system. I think everyone's Saturday nights were a little brighter when you would come on and say, "Show Trebek, we meet again." We'll get to that. You knew you were going to be in for one hell of a ride when that. We'll get into that. First, the book. God, if you're not up there, I don't know what the F star, what that's supposed to be. Fucked. Oh.
It's a prayer from a Caribbean jail. I was in prison in the Bahamas, and I didn't know any prayers. And so I said, God, if you're not up there, I'm fucked. And then I thought that wasn't a proper prayer. So I asked them to bring in a Bible, and even the hardest guards in the world will give you a Bible.
Oh.
And so I'm not a church-going guy, but I looked in Psalms, and they had some nice prayers. So if anyone is offended by that title, I apologize to you, but it was my first shot at reaching out to the maker of trees and hanger of planets. And he responded, I got off.
Good. So you still have a little bit of religion, am I right or am I wrong?
I didn't really have any religion at all. I mean, I have when I saw my daughter born, I thought whoever could like design, because women have ecosystems in their stomach. I don't mean to be indelicate. And I thought whoever could put an ecosystem in a person's stomach is not an accountant or a man. I mean, a man can't do it, nor can a man make a blade of grass. So I thought by definition that would be a god. Now, more specific than that, I'm not.
There's got to be some power. That's what I believe. There's something that if you ever read an anatomy book and see what our bodies do, how you fight off sicknesses, something's going on.
I mean, hanging 9 planets in the air and spinning them.
Yeah.
It's goddamn impressive.
Yeah. And the meteorites one just missed the Earth, and you think, all these years, we've never been hit except in a Bruce Willis movie. We're never threatened. How is the book doing, incidentally?
It's on the New York Times bestseller list.
Great. Now, I know I have a few questions prepared, and then I think from talking out there, we're just going to wing it. First, I know why people write a book, one, to make money. Someone asks them to write it. You want to get your name out there. But this book is almost like an inspirational book. Did you have anything in your mind like to inspire people who are down and out or struggling?
I'll tell you, people had said, if you could help one kid, would you write the book? And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to help anybody, but yeah, I would. But the truth is, I've been wanting to write that book for a long time. I waited till my mom died, and then I knew I was going to write it because I'm still to this day fascinated, I guess I always will, about agreements between perpetrator and victim. I mean, actual contracts in which that are designed by the perpetrator and conformed to by the victim. The victim agrees to do certain things. The victim agrees to act like it's not happening. The victim agrees to act like something else is happening. And the victim ain't gonna tell nobody because the implicit... Fuck, way to kill my buzz. He's getting ready to make a point.
You're feeling like a victim here, I know, but he's just doing his job.
Yeah, way to go, perp.
No, wait, are you talking about your mom and your relationship? Is that it?
Yeah, I'm talking about anyone that gets tortured or raped or beaten, yeah. When I was in detox, I was in with the tortured and raped people.
They say that comedy comes from pain. Yeah. I don't know if you agree with that. Do you think that if you'd grown up and your mom had been all sunshine and flowers, do you think you'd be where you are now, or did it give some spark to be recognized?
I want to say no. But then again, I know geniuses that are well-adjusted and don't have bad habits. I mean, I do. I think Will Ferrell and Tina Fey, they're geniuses, but neither one of them has a bad habit. Uh-huh. I mean, they don't drink much, they jog, they take care of their kids, they pay their bills. It's like a whole thing with them.
But
this whole health thing they're into, and they hit the ball out of the park.
Are you in that kind of health now? You're leading a healthy life.
I'm pretty healthy. I'm only on one medication as opposed to when I was doing all the people you were talking about, like Sean Connery, I was on 7 drugs because no one really knew what to do with me. I mean, when you wake up screaming at night, when you become disoriented, you don't know where you are for no reason, all of a sudden, they're saying, oh, he's a schizophrenic, he's a multiple personality, he's all these things, and I wasn't any of those things, which I talk about in the book.
You have a great commitment to everything. I was very impressed in the early chapters. You loved baseball.
More than anything except my daughter.
Yeah. And you'd get out there and play. You had a friend that wouldn't get out and you'd pitch to each other?
Well, I was friends with Bruce Bochy, the manager of the San Francisco Giants. We grew up in the same town. Yeah, we were just kids throwing the ball in our bare feet. He grew up to make the major leagues, and I grew up to make Saturday Night Live. Pretty weird.
But the commitment you have, and then tell me about what prompted you to get up. The first time you got up at the comic strip, is it in New York?
It was what do you call it? Catch a Rising Star.
Catch Rising Star.
Yeah.
Now, you'd been doing comedy.
I had not been doing comedy. I was a bartender in Hell's Kitchen with a group of guys that were knock-around longshoremen from Hell's Kitchen, Irish kids, 20-something, in their 20s. And they used to get me to get behind the bar and do impressions of Rodney Dangerfield for them. And they would cheer me on and tip me, and I thought, these are the greatest guys. And I went out drinking with them a couple of times, and I was just, and then, 15 years later, I found out they're assassins. They chopped guys up. And they were like, Darrell, you're funny, Darrell. You should do this for a living, Darrell. I swear to God. So I'm like, really? Do you think so? They're like, yeah, you should go to Catch a Rising Star, Darrell. They have open mic night, a whole fucking thing. I'm like, I should go to Catch a Rising Star. Darrell, you should go, Darrell. So, I only had one joke. It was Popeye having an orgasm. It's the only thing I could think of. And they're like, Darrell, do the Popeye, having an orgasm with olive oil and whatnot. People are gonna love that fucking shit, Darrell. I go there, I'm at Catch a Rising Star, it's 1:30 in the morning, and I look out there, and there are these three guys. And I find out later they chopped guys up. They were assassins. And they were like, Darrell! And I'm up there, and I'm doing Popeye having an orgasm. And no one in the room, everyone's looking at me like with stony silence, like, oh my God, this guy sucks so bad. And they're back there like, Darrell, what the fuck are you, that fucking shit? You fucking do it again, Darrell. No, Popeye again, Darrell.
What impressed me is what happened to you that night after the show. Didn't the owner take you out front and give you a little talk?
Which one?
Catch a Rising Star. He sat you down and had you look at the pictures.
Oh, no. I moved back to Florida because I couldn't stand being a waiter and because I was a nut. And, yeah. And so years later, I finally get up the courage. I had been doing stand-up around the country, working as an MC and a middle act. Hello, how are you again? Oh, that's good. And so I go up at the comic strip, which I don't know if any of you know, but in New York City, it's a very famous comedy club, sort of a pantheon of famous people. I don't even know what that means, but... So I go up there, it's my first night on stage, my second night on stage in New York City. I try out for this famous club. I get up there, it's the break of a lifetime, I kill, which in comedy parlance means home run. I have the greatest set of my life, the audience going crazy, and then this guy, after you audition at the comic strip in those days, you would sit down with the owner and he would tell you what he thought. And I thought, I just killed at the comic strip. I'm on my way. Mm-hmm. And I sat down there and I was happy, and he said, so, I'm going to paraphrase, but not by much. He said, I don't think there's any reason that you should come back here or call again.
Yeah.
And I said, what are you talking about? I killed. And he goes, look at these pictures. Sandler, Murphy, Billy Crystal, all of these people up on the wall, Chris Farley. He goes, these people are what we're about. We're about stars. These people have it. And I don't think you have it. I don't think you should come back. So I remember thinking to myself, we were talking about this outside. I was like, but I'm 34 years old. This is my shot. And I remember taking the train back to Brooklyn. I had enough money to get back to Brooklyn, just change, and I would have shot myself if I could buy a knife or a beer. I couldn't. Slipped on the ice, bruised my tailbone. Years later, I'm on Saturday Night Live, right? And I get a call. Yes, Mr. Hammond, there's Lucian Hold on the line. He would like to know if he could come up. And you know, I've always wanted to say things to people. Like, you know, I have these revenge fantasies. And in the fantasy, I kind of look at the guy mean, and I'm thinking, you know, like, I think I walk up with brutes behind me, and I'm like, I look at the guy mean, and I couldn't say nothing mean to him.
This is the man that told you he had no reason to come back.
Yeah, the guy that killed my dreams. I couldn't say nothing mean, and I hated myself for that. I wanted to have a good line, like, you know, you're lucky I could have been your father, but the dog beat me over the fence. Some lines that I thought of later. You didn't say that last night when I was pumping Moo Goo Gai Pan all over your tonsils. You stuttering prick. You know, shit I thought of when I was in the bar.
But in the grand scheme of things, you were right. He had his life. He said that to you at the time. He was not thinking. You were right. You would have gained nothing by saying that to him. But most people might have said, that's it for me. I'm not going to do it
But
anymore.
I did say that. But then what was I going to do?
But you kept going. And what did you do?
I decided that I probably was going to fail. I was too old. And that, so what? Screw
And
it.
now the jump from your first time doing Popeye to get on the road, what prompted you to do that? I understand you kind of were influenced by your mom in a way.
Well, my mom did impressions.
Uh-huh.
She was psychotic, a psychotic sociopathic. I don't know if it's, I always had the feeling she did some fucking nefarious shit when people weren't looking. But she did impressions. And then she was talking like our neighbor, Mr. Nelson, one day. And then just started talking like Mr. Nelson, too. And then she looked at me like, oh my God, you can do this. You can do this too. And like genetically, whatever, it had passed on to me. So we can skip back to that. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of you. I saw Truman Capote on stage at the University of Florida when I was but a pup. I was 19. Does anyone know who I'm talking about?
Sure.
He was famous for being proud of his homosexuality and also his effeminate voice, and he was a tiny little guy with a tiny little voice. And he got up on stage and he read a story. Now this is a largely segregationist, heterosexual, homophobic South, because this is a while ago, okay? I'm elderly. But after it was over, they had a question and answer session, and a brute of an alpha male steps up and says, "Are you a homosexual?" He pauses for exactly the right amount of time and goes, "Is that a proposition?" And the place went nuts. And the hair stood up on my neck. I was like, God damn, I have to have that. I got to find a way to get that. And I never stopped thinking about it.
And so, was he one of your early impressions?
No, I never did him.
Until later. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Yeah. Your most influential years, I mean, to me, it was like from about 11 to 15, 16, I had heroes. Who were your heroes in show business then?
Richard Pryor.
Oh, really? Richard? Yes.
God, yeah.
So you don't go back as far as I do to Bob Hope and Abbott.
Oh, I love those guys. I saw them and I admired them, but Pryor touched me in a way that every time I was in a slump or discouraged or disheartened or knew I wasn't going to make it, I would watch him and I would go, I don't care. I have to try that. I have to be that. Now, I never made it, but I never was not hypnotized by what he did. And and everyone said, well, he says motherfucker a lot. Well, not all the time. What they don't know about him is that every concert film he ever did had 30 minutes of squeaky clean material. This is the greatest stand-up that ever lived.
You think so?
Well, I don't know how to. I mean, when you get up in that top 5 and 10, when you see a lot of people don't know that Leno's a stand-up and he gets 10 laughs a minute, Seinfeld 10 laughs a minute, Cosby 10 laughs a minute. I mean, Pryor 11 laughs a minute. You know, I mean, this guy was incredible. whatever it was, he spoke to me and moved me. And then I finally saw him when he was dying, and I was like, people were standing around looking at me. I was on Saturday Night Live. I was like, you know what, fuck this. I kissed him on the head. I loved him, you know what I mean?
So he was your prime influence. You think he was the funniest stand-up? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just for your endorsement, that's something.
Oh, I don't think you could say that Cosby wasn't funnier.
Because it was Richard Pryor was kind of influenced by Bill Cosby.
Was he?
Yes, because I remember when he was starting out, did an act kind of like Bill Cosby, and then he got into his own style.
But we're all influenced, aren't we, by somebody?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
I was influenced by him. I did my whole stand-up, every joke I ever wrote was the way he did it, which was you do the setup to the joke in your own voice, and then you do your punchline in character. And he did that. And I guess Cosby did that, too.
Yeah. I guess so. So then you like the people who come after him. Chris Rock you must enjoy.
I was a little jealous of him. That guy could write jokes that were electrifying.
Yeah.
Electrifying.
Yeah.
And he was a sweet man, and I was like, I'm not that good. No, you see, I'd see the guy on stage at the Comedy Cellar at 1 a.m., and I know I'm not that good. I'm not as good as him.
Well, you're not a joke writer, but for impressions. I'd talk to people who are impressionists, and I'd say, are you going to perform anywhere? And I'd say, well, I don't really have an act. But people are like kids. They love to see impressions.
They do. And also, I learned pretty early that I didn't say funny things. I said things in a funny way. You know?
Your mom, you talk about her in the book, the things that she did to you, which were pretty bad.
Yeah.
But later in the book, you said like there was one instant when you went down and sat on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And she just sat and watched you looking out the window. But you said maybe she knew that the train wasn't going to come along. Or maybe she knew she could come out. Do you think, looking back, maybe she wasn't quite as bad as you originally thought?
Well, I will say this. If I saw my child sitting on a railroad track, there's no force on the earth that would stop me from running and pulling the child off the railroad track. Not to sit there and stare at me blank-faced, curious as to see what's going to happen, like a science student doing a lab experiment. Just like, I wonder what kind of gore happens now. What sort of slaughter will this be? Lots of blood and guts and shit. This is pretty interesting. To skip forward, the breakthrough in my life was I had a dream that she was a little... I'm sorry. I dreamed she was a little girl. Oh. I dreamed there was a little girl out there in this psych nut house I was in, and I dreamed that she was standing out there, and the girl had her eyes. And then I dreamed that she had been innocent one time, and that someone had done something to her that turned her into this. And then I thought, I remember waking up the next morning and thinking, I don't hate her today. Now that's 50-something years of hate. And I was like, I don't hate her today because I don't know how to put it any better than that. Yeah. Because someone had to torture her. A little kid.
So she was a victim too.
Yeah.
I had a stepfather who I had terrible memories of, but as I get older, I start being like him. I'm thinking the same way he did. I said, oh my God, I'm just like my stepfather. You know, that's tough to have a stepfather when you don't want your mom to marry someone else. And that's not funny. But as I look back, you know.
True that.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Mom, you know, I don't want him in the house. He once said to me, he says, you're ruining my life, which is a bad memory to have.
And you thought to yourself, well, I'm going to be a comic.
Yeah, that's right. But you do.
Nowhere to go from here.
Well, you do, in a way. You want to be loved and appreciated. And then when I'm talking about the commitment, you wanted to be a baseball player. And you got to played ball with Bruce Bochy and probably kind of held your own. What was the difference between him and you? Just innate talent, or did he try? Yeah, okay.
When we started to play a higher form of ball up around the age of 17, 18 years old, we started playing junior college baseball. And in Florida, that's as good as any major college. It's like minor league baseball. These kids have grown up playing 12 months a year since they were old enough to walk. And we faced a pitcher named Denny Davis who threw 100 miles an hour. They said there was cars, there were people, there were actual Pittsburgh Pirates that had flown down on a day off to see this kid throw. Nobody on our team could come close to touching the ball. and he hit line drive after line drive.
Bruce Bochy.
After line drive.
Yeah.
It was nothing to him.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to myself, yeah, I don't have it.
Yeah.
Again,
It's kind of a...
I'm not as good as him.
But I wanted to be a big league ball player, too, and my wife says, if you'd been a big league ball player, you'd be washed up now. You know, it'd be too
True.
old. I said, well, I'd be hanging on. It's kind of annoying, isn't it, to realize that someone has just innate talent. I think of Lou Gehrig in his final year. Suddenly he became more like everyone else. He lost that talent because he was ill. And then I said, well, that's how most people are. They just can't get around on the ball. Anyway, we're not talking about your baseball career. What I was trying to talk about is your commitment. And what influenced me in the book and what I remember, you said that after doing an SNL, Saturday Night Live show on a Saturday night, you would walk across town to a club and get up and do a comedy set.
To see if I could improve what I'd done.
Yeah, that is amazing. And it wasn't just like you had an impression in front of the mirror and and move on to the next one.
Because I would walk out of there going, I didn't get it the way I wanted. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and I'd be frustrated and crazy. And I'd go over to Caroline's at 1:30 in the morning and try the shit again, and I never stopped. I developed all my characters on stage in the Village or at Caroline's in Midtown.
Do you remember what your first couple of impressions were?
Popeye and Porky Pig.
Popeye
scat singing and Porky Pig's vowel consonant substitution.
Which is what?
Well, Popeye scat singing is, let's see. Thank you. I mean, all right, and then I did Porky Pig, yelling at Sylvester, and I had to figure out what the hell he was doing. And I call it the vowel consonant substitution. So it was this,
Sylvester, what are you? A manic depressive or something?
Now I'm a weird, like, you know, when I was in my teens, I did for myself only because people would have thought I was gay. I did Martin Luther King because Martin Luther King spoke to me, and like I believed the things he said on TV. And where I'm from, if you like black people back then, you were a fag.
Oh.
Or if you were different.
You were from Florida.
Yeah, and I'd be in my bedroom, and I mean, I'd really be doing them for me, channeling him, inspiring me, settling me. And no one else was talking to me. Yeah. No one else knew what it was like to be deliberately deprived of your potential as a human being. Deliberately. At length, systematically, and on purpose. He did. And he was talking about that with that glorious voice. And I later on, when I was in my 20s, I used to walk around Times Square doing Martin Luther King speeches.
Out loud?
Oh, yeah. Of course, in Times Square, nobody even looked at you. I mean, and then one time I was in college. I was at one of those big colleges in Milwaukee, and I got drunk before I went on. I was having a pretty good set, and I just said, you know what, fuck this. I don't feel like doing comedy anymore. I'm doing I Have a Dream. And I did it, and standing ovation, man. Oh. Those kids didn't know nothing about him, but those words, I mean, and then I thought, yeah, he talks to white people too.
Yeah.
He does?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. I think you're most famous for, like, Clinton. You did a lot of political people. This must have gotten you into some very interesting situations. Do you have any great memories? You met Bill Clinton, and you became, did you know, were you on a first-name basis, like, hi, Bill? And,
oh, no.
Oh, no?
No,
I just saw a Paul McCartney special, and Bill Clinton walked in. He said, hi, Bill. It was like two old friends.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm sure
I was on stage at White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I was a club comic, uneducated and rough around the edges. And I'm up there, and I'm going, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Clinton is the kind of guy. And the whole place went, because you don't say his name. You call him Mr. President.
Oh.
Well, I screwed up. And he's Paul McCartney. He's allowed to call him Bill, I guess. But I never would.
Well, I bet you probably, you met him, though. And did he must have told you he loved you? Or?
Oh, my God.
He's a charming guy. I've never met him, but I hear he's very charming.
Oh, my God. it's the only instance I've ever seen of true charisma, where, let me give you an example of what I mean. If Clinton were here, to this day, he would talk to every person here until you didn't want to talk anymore. I'm not kidding you. He loves people, he loves to talk to people, and people say he's faking it. If he is, you can't catch him. He talks to everyone, and everything you say he remembers, so that when you see him 5 years later, he's like, how's your daughter's Little League team? Bush, on the other hand, wouldn't talk to none of you. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy, just not interested. Bush Jr.
Bush Jr.
I mean...
Bush Light.
Bush Light.
That's not just a silly.
I swear to God, I don't mean to speak derogatorily of the guy, but he was talking to me, and I thought any second he was going to lean into me and go, abracadabra. I don't know what the fuck that was all about. But I thought he was going to say abracadabra. And I realized, I started watching tapes of him, and then I saw that I'd never seen a president like him. I mean, I'd never seen a president stop talking in the middle of a sentence because they were done. I swear to you, it would come over his face sometimes that you could see, I don't care how much you like him, you could see sometimes it would come over his face that he didn't like this sentence no more. Right? You see up there, he'd be going, you know, I appreciate your hard work, and I believe that yes, sir. Well, Reagan, on the other hand, people said he was senile and not smart. Reagan could manipulate the press conference better than all of them. Like, Reagan literally could say nothing, but it would sound like he said something. He's a genius, this guy. You watch these tapes of him, he could manipulate the English language better than anyone. Like, you'd say, Mr. Reagan, here's a photo of you and the Ayatollah Khomeini playing basketball. Tell us about that. He'd be like, well, if you take a bicycle pump and leave it outside overnight, all of a sudden, next question.
Bush, he did seem like kind of a doltish guy, and that's very funny. But he
was completely clever.
He was the president twice.
Yeah.
He went to Yale.
Yes.
So he had something there. Maybe he just didn't have the personality. But
I think I've always said that if you put him in the streets of New York City with no education, no money, and no famous dad, he'd have an apartment in a month.
Yeah.
There was something about him that understood how to do things. I have a tape of him at home cutting out the middle of a sentence and continuing as if he hadn't.
I gotta hear this.
No, he's like, you know, people say the Constitution. That's not what it says. Like, they wanted me to play him on SNL, and I was like, I don't think he's dumb. I think the guy has an innate intelligence that you're not giving him credit for.
Well, an impressionist can really make fun of him because he can just take it to any extreme. Who was running the country? I mean, you told me about the most impressive man you've ever met. Tell the audience what you were telling me.
Vice President
the Vice
Cheney.
President, yes. Why did he impress you so much?
First of all, he's the nicest guy to me, and he laughed at all my jokes.
This is very surprising, I'm sure, to people in the audience.
Listen, you do not have to do... Did I do Clinton yet?
Who?
Have I done Clinton yet? Oh, we got to do that.
Who, Clinton?
Yeah, we'll just talk about him. But Cheney had me to an underground bunker in Virginia with his Republican pals. There are photos in the Washington Post archives of this. I'm dressed up like Bill Clinton. He wanted me to come there dressed as Bill Clinton and heckle his pals. And him. They say the guy's the best laugher ever, I swear to you. And he was so nice to me. And so I'm just telling you, you don't need to do acid or LSD. If you've been up there as Bill Clinton, and let me tell you my opening, I'm not going to do Clinton for you yet, but my open joke as Clinton was, boy, that Dick Cheney, with his heart condition and his pacemaker, every time he sneezes, the garage door opens. Cheney is 10 feet in front of me going, that's funny. I thought, well, I was going to try LSD, but don't need to now. This guy was nice as hell to me.
Great. I just saw how much time we've been up here, and we want to get into questions and some impressions. First, baseball. You're completely drug-free now, am I? And alcohol and drug-free. Yeah. I'm not prying, but in your book, you seem it's also another inspirational story. You just determined to be free. Am I right?
Well, I have to say that the drugs that I did that took me down, that put me in the ambulance, I don't do anymore. No. I smoke cigarettes. Sorry.
Well,
yeah.
And you haven't quit. My friend Martin Maltz, I asked him if he's quit smoking. He says people hate a quitter. But you still smoke. Why do you smoke cigarettes? Is it
I just
one step at a time, huh?
It's like they say it's harder than heroin, or it's pretty damn hard.
Yeah, I know. Well, I
Huh? What's that?
Today's National Smokeout.
Really?
Well,
I'm glad the crowd elected you as a spokesperson.
a couple of questions.
Look, lady, I'm a bum, all right? I don't do shit right.
There's some stories I'm not going to get into in the book about some of your experience. You never went on stage, on camera, impaired, did you?
Never.
That's great. You also, which is nice for kids if they read this book, that when you had one of your big breakdowns on Saturday Night Live, was it Derek Jeter was there, and you said something that sticks in my mind, that he couldn't even comprehend what was happening to you.
It was A-Rod.
A-Rod, because he was programmed to succeed.
Oh, yeah.
That's very...
I have this in the book where last year I did Trump on SNL, and it went great. I was sober, I was happy, and it went great. A year earlier, or a year and a half earlier, I had done my final SNL appearances as Lou Dobbs on Weekend Update. So if you want to watch a guy having a flashback, look at me as Lou Dobbs on Weekend Update. And the thing that was so hard for me was my hero, A-Rod, was about 20 feet in front of me with the gorgeous Kate Hudson on his arm. And A-Rod was looking at me like a dog would look at your answer machine. like when your voice comes out, like that. He was just standing looking at me because what he was witnessing, he couldn't comprehend. He was witnessing malfunction, and he didn't understand it because he wasn't born to malfunction. He was born to hit 800 home runs and do big things. Mm-hmm. So I was there, and my hero was there, and he was like, "What in the world is that?" Looking at me like that. And I fumbled my way through it, and I was trying to do this impression of Lou Dobbs, and the room was wet and red, and I was freaking out. Mm-hmm. And he saw it. It's very humiliating.
You also have some stories in here about doing damage to yourself. I don't want to get into that because I want to. Yeah. Let him read the book. I want to end on some funny things. But first, that's
why we hired you, bud.
I started to read the book. And I said, I don't want to read it all the way. I want to just read a chapter or two at a time. It was fascinating. Tying drugs into baseball, your take on Barry Bonds and in the enhancement. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame? Mark McGwire, what do you think?
What if I answered you as Regis?
Oh, okay. He just retired. I thought what the hell? I thought he retired a year ago. Today's his last day or something. He's still retiring. Go, Regis, what would you think about it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's see.
You can't impress me by hitting 70 home runs anymore. You want to impress me? Do it the way Babe Ruth did it, with a 12 Boilermaker hangover and a scorching case of the clap.
Wait, that was not a case of the clap. It was indigestion. I'm an old baseball fan. Come on. But the heroes, Ruth's, Roger Maris, does he deserve an asterisk because he played in more games? Got more at bats.
You mean fewer games?
No, Maris played in 8 more games than Ruth and hit 61. Your take. It has nothing to do with the book, but I'm just interested. You're a baseball fan. You're wearing a Yankee hat.
I'll tell you, I am a huge fan of the Yankees. I don't want to bore the non-baseball people, but Huh? You, I think that I can't answer that question, and I'm not copping out because sure he had these more games, and they said Hank Aaron had more games than Babe Ruth and all that. But those guys back then, I'm sorry to say, weren't throwing sliders on a 3-2 pitch. Yeah. And if you were the pitcher and you sucked that day, they got 100 runs off you. They didn't pull you. And these guys today throw harder. And I mean, there's so many. Baseball is a game of small statistics. I can't balance it out.
Yeah.
Magnificent athletes.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
I wanted to be a ball player, and I watched today, and I say I could not have done what they do. But in other words, the drug, the enhancement, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, you still have to have something to hit 65, 70 home runs. Anyway, let's move on. This is not it. Have you ever met someone you wanted to do an impression but you just couldn't capture them?
I'm not going to tell you about it, but yeah.
Okay. And I had another question. Back in like the 40s and 50s, Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, Jimmy Cagney, easy to do impressions of. Today, people are a little tougher to. I mean, you get Christopher Walken. Everyone does Christopher Walken, but
yeah.
Why is it more difficult today? What's with the acting?
No idea.
Okay, let's move on. Oh, I'm quite. But which?
I graduated college with a 2.1. I'm not a bright man.
Oh.
I never got a question on Jeopardy right. Did you want to talk about Sean Connery?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I remember asking you once, I was interviewing for Jay Leno, I said, Darrell, how come Alex Trebek keeps having Sean Connery back on his show when he's so insulting? You probably don't remember this, and you looked at me and you said, well, Fred, the audience seems to enjoy it. I said, no, Darrell, I'm talking fun, make believe. So, where did you first think to do a take like that on Sean Connery?
Does anyone want to hear this clap?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Trebek.
All right.
The penis stronger than a...
the penis mightier?
Penis mightier than the word, yeah.
All right.
Nobody... who thought of... What, was that your idea to make him so abusive and insulting? And it was wonderful.
Well, listen, no one thought that was going to be funny. It was 4 o'clock in the morning at Saturday Night Live. No one... We didn't... Will Ferrell was like across the hall, and he was working on an impression of Alex Trebek. Uh-huh. I was in my office eating chocolate-covered espresso beans, looking at The Untouchables with Sean Connery. And I was doing the lines from it. I was learning, okay, pal, why the Mahashka? Mr. Nash, I am just a poor beat cop. And for reasons not apparent to me, I turned to Will Ferrell as he was doing Alex Trebek, and I said, not a fan of the ladies, are you, Trebek? Thereby cementing my only niche in Western civilization. Fred, I always knew I'd go down for something, but I didn't think it would be for saying, I'll take famous titties for 600. and yet, it's the most popular thing I ever did, by a long shot.
Saturday Night Live.
More than Clinton? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it just put a whole silly light. I mean, and I was serious. Every time you would come on, I think they panned across, and we didn't know if you were going to be on. And then suddenly, and Sean Connery,
and the place would go crazy.
We meet again, Trebek. Oh my God! And anything went there. Who else were some of your favorite people to do? Who did you have your best response from, or you yourself enjoyed doing?
Trump. I think I'd like to. Al Sharpton.
Who?
Al Sharpton.
Oh, Al Sharpton. Yeah.
Trump. You want me to just do this quickly?
Oh, absolutely.
Trump has me to his office. Someone once said to me, what a bizarre life you live. I mean, what a bizarre that you go to Trump's office and he sits there talking to you. I have to tell you that he has a very healthy self-image.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he perceives himself in a certain way and he cannot perceive an insult. I mean, the shit just bounces off him. Like, Rosie was trying to insult him, and she's a good insulter. I mean, she's funny, and she was saying all this mean shit, just bouncing off him. She was like, he likes younger women. He left his wife for a younger woman. Trump's like, yeah, and your point is, if I had a nickel for every time, hey, wait a minute, I do. Now, Sharpton is the only person that has ever been on a political stage that says what he's thinking. I mean, these other guys, I hate to say this, are coached. They're saying, here's what we're going to say tonight. Here's how we're going to say it. Let's rehearse. He does not get coached. And he says things that other people don't say. So I'm watching TV one day, and I saw Dick Gephardt talking about Homeland Security. I changed the channel. I saw Joe Lieberman talking about tax cuts. I changed the channel again. I heard Sharpton say, "I did not call Giuliani a bozo. I said Bozo could have done just as good a job as Giuliani. Clearly, that's not calling Giuliani Bozo. That's not saying Giuliani is Bozo. There's a world of difference." Funny thing.
Who have you not met? Who would you have liked to have had host Saturday Night Live? Or anyone you haven't met yet, or you'd like to impersonate?
I don't know.
Do you have a handle? Do you have a handle on the new Republican candidates? They're coming along. They seem kind of generic. Are you working in on them?
I'm not going to. I watched one night, and I'm not interested, and I won't do it again. I will tell you what I saw one night in 16 minutes. Shall I do that?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Richard Pryor did a white guy voice. Mm-hmm. A lot of that.
A lot of guys talking like that. I mean, Chris Wallace from Fox News was up there going,
I was fascinated by Rick Perry. They had said he talked like Bush. You know, a lot of people say, Rick Perry is kind of like a Texas Reagan that someone threw a sheet over his head and spun him. No, I'm kidding. I'm just made that up. I don't want nothing to do with politics anymore. But he reminds me of Bush because he sounds a little bit like him. He's got that Texas accent.
And he was governor of Texas, too, so he's on that same track.
Yeah, but he doesn't, he switches sentences a lot. And then when he's done it too many times, he invokes national pride. Okay? So you would say, he'd be up there going, he'd be up there going, when a monkey crawls up the tree, and you just look up there and you just see that, that thing that just the god awful, when my brain thoughts travel to my word hole, I love America. Very nice. That's the only guy I saw that was interesting. No, I thought Herman Cain was very interesting, but Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich were very intelligent, although Mr. Romney is seamless, isn't he?
Seamless?
Like, yeah, how does a man that good looking be so sexless? Well, I'll tell you. Kidding you. No, I thought Romney and Gingrich were very impressive.
I want to go into the dark side for a brief minute and then into the front side. Then I'm going to throw the floor open to questions. You wanted to talk about cutting. What was the worst experience you did? You used to cut yourself.
Yeah.
Which that puzzles a lot of people. And why would you do it, and what was your worst experience? It's described in the book, but you tell us.
When I was doing extra, the E! Channel today, and a girl came up and held out her arm, and she was a cutter. Uh-huh. And I turned her over to my friend Donna, who's in AA in New York and big in the recovery movement, and they hooked up and they had a conversation. Because I don't know what to say. I'm not you know what I mean? But I was cutting to create a smaller crisis than the one that was going on inside me. If you cut, it's just a simple flesh wound. I mean, I was never trying to kill myself. I was just opening up, and blood was coming out, and it was easier to manage than the horror show in my head, like getting stabbed, as a kid. Like I would have these...
No, wait a minute. Who stabbed you?
My mom.
Oh, I glossed over that, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like that's a good...
She just asked me to open my mouth, and I opened my mouth, and I went like that, and I was about 5, and this is where why I never forgot and why I say this again. I was fascinated by the idea that they're asking you to behave as if this is not occurring, that something else is occurring. So she came up and she was just, when you open your mouth and you do that, okay, pop, with a steak knife, just the tip of it. And I thought about that every day of my life for 50 fucking years. Last year I wrote about it. Every day of my life, I thought about being asked to behave as if this is not occurring. And I knew one day I was going to write about it, but I didn't get up the courage till she died. I was still afraid of her.
Well, that's what I mean. A lot of inspiration that people survive that. This was not the Ricky Nelson story, is it? It was. All right, let me ask you one thing. You did a couple of weeks ago. We were in the same building. You did your take on the Ghostbusters, the Ghost Hunters.
Oh shit!
Yeah. Tell them what they do and what you'd like to see them do.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll throw the floor open to a question or two.
Let me just tell you, I'm loosely wrapped. I'm a nut, and I'm not bright. But let me just tell you this: I don't watch TV. Not ever. I don't have cable, except during Yankee season, and I watch the game every night, okay? But one thing I saw during this past Yankee season, I started flipping around, and I saw ghost hunting shows. I became enchanted with people that hunt ghosts. And then I finally decided they're too nice to the ghost, though. I mean, they're really nice. They're sort of like, like, is there someone here that wants to talk? Wants to communicate with people who are still here? Perhaps a grievance that has not been addressed? I mean, that's too fucking nice. I want to see Brooklyn Mafia ghost hunting. You're like, excuse me, are you the one going whoa, whoa, whoa up and down the hall? Are you the cocksucker going whoa, whoa, whoa? Shut that shit up. My wife and I are trying to sleep. Understand, Cash? But another whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm going to suck your ass in my vacuum cleaner. Yeah, prick ya. And then I thought, you could just go on forever. Like, I'd like to see, like, San Francisco ghost hunting. Like, just leave. I'm sick of your shit. I hate you.
And afterwards, I said to Darrell, so in San Francisco, they don't take any crap. He says, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. One quick more question. You did Truman Capote. Robert Morris said when he did it, he was banging his head up against the wall trying to remember the lines. Did you have trouble? That's 90 minutes of monologue, one person on stage. And you did did you?
I worked on those lines for almost 10 months with my friend Donna, and we worked every day.
Huh.
For 10 months.
So again, dedication.
And fuck yeah, you forget it.
Huh?
That's a lot of lines.
You bet, yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what I mean by commitment. Okay. We had a laugh. We talked about the cutting. We talked about San
Clinton?
Francisco. What?
Did we talk about Clinton?
Clinton. Oh, go
All
ahead.
right, I'll just do one quick story.
Oh.
People love this man. They're fascinated by him, and they have no problem coming up to me and talking to me about him. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have to tell you a couple of stories. Should I tell the gynecologist or the co-ed?
I don't think people. Of course, yes. Let's
do the
you've-
gynecologist.
Yeah, of course.
The co-ed is tasteless, but true. Both stories are true.
The co-ed is tasteless. Oh, go ahead.
All right, I'll do the both. I had a colon. I reached the age of 50, and I had a colonoscopy because Katie Kirk told me. No, she has a big campaign in New York, and she said, when you're 50, you have to get this.
Yeah.
And I thought, I should get it. So I went to this great doctor in New York, and he got a colonoscopy. I will say I never felt a thing. But just as they were about to insert a camera in a place that God didn't design for a camera, the anesthesiologist leaned into me and said, "What would Clinton say?" Now, I was too high to respond, but what I wanted to say to her is, what is a nice girl like you doing in a place like that? Now, the other one, that's a pretty good line, but I couldn't get it out because the other one, I was at the University of Iowa, and I was walking back to my car, and a co-ed came running up and said, Mr. Hammond, I'll show you my tits if you would do Bill Clinton for me. I looked at her and I said, young lady, that is so sick. That is so incredibly sick. You are ill and I am a doctor. Look, I wish I were a better person. I'm not. I mean, my whole life I've been wanting that to happen. You know how much money and time I spent trying to take a look at touch an actual boob? I love doing these guys because I have no personality. Not only do I have no personality, I have no face. Like, all the makeup artists that see me go, wow, there's nothing there. It's blank. And the truth is that the makeup artists that have worked with me always say, I can paint on your face. And they get excited because it's blank. And also, no personality to speak of. So when you get to do a guy like Jesse Jackson, you feel great, right? Now, one of the more interesting stories I found during the beginning of the Taliban, our exposure to the Taliban, was Jesse said that the Taliban had called him to come see him, which was great because he has mediated historic processes in the past. He's freed people, prisoners. I mean, he's fantastic at this. Of course. But then some weird friend of his comes out the next day and goes, nah, Jesse called them. So then there was like this debate in Washington, like, who gives a fuck? Go over there and help, Jesse's on TV like, I did not contact the Taliban. They, in fact, contacted me. What happened with this? I had a hang-up on my machine. So I stalled 69. And a voice on the other end said, who's this? I said, who's this? They said, you called us. I said, no, I stalled 69, you. And then at first I thought it was my friend Gary playing a practical joke and rat-a-tat-tat. But then the voice on the other end started going, That's how I knew it was the Taliban. I did not make matters better when I said, come, Mr. Taliban, Taliban, but...
He sounds like a fun guy.
Ice Cube has a sitcom called Are We There Yet? That will be on WTBS next year, and I'm going to do that.
Wonderful.
I have a movie coming out called Scoutmasters, another one called Buzzkill, and I just agreed to do another movie next year. That's 3 movies next year. Great. 3 movies and a sitcom and a book.
Another book?
No, this book.
This book, okay.
But what I want to do is Truman Capote on Broadway. I was going to do it. I mean, there were some Broadway people that were looking at me, and then I got hit by a car. So it didn't happen. But I hope to do it.
You got hit by a car?
I did.
Do me an impression of Truman Capote, what he thinks when he sees a car coming at him. I'm just pulling this out. What would Truman Capote say if he looks up and his car is bearing down on him? I shouldn't do this.
I don't fucking know.
Oh.
Oh, no, tell me. Give me a line. I'll say it.
Oh, good heavens. Which way should I jump? I don't know.
All right.
As opposed to Tennessee Williams, well, I guess I depend on the kindness of traffic police. I don't know. I'm matching wits with Darrell Hammond here. This is impossible. Is there
Truman
another?
Capote
Do you
saying
have a quick
what?
Truman Capote? Was like as he's coming at you. You did a bit. You did it for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
A car is bearing down on Truman. What does he say?
It's like, let's see, how does it?
Oh, my lord, it's just that I just don't know which way I can jump, but, Fred, did you go to the school of being fine?
Sorry.
No,
I couldn't think of anything.
what he might say is, I hope the car doesn't stop because he might get rear-ended. I don't know.
I thought my dad was really bold. You know, at the end of his life, me and my friend Eddie. My father was a World War II soldier. I'm very proud. Unless anyone think I'm like a bleeding heart liberal, I am on a lot, but I'm very proud of him. His service against the Nazis.
Yeah. We
And-
never mentioned your dad. Yeah, he
Well,
fought in the great...
He was obsessed with Nazis. He believed they were verifiable evil. He never, ever stopped thinking about them, ever, for 50 years. And neither did our house. And because he didn't know if they were biblical evil, but he knew they were not of this world. He believed that. Mm-hmm. And he killed a lot of them. And he didn't go to church. He did. He killed a lot of Nazis. Mm. And he thought God wouldn't like him because he'd killed so many guys. Mm-hmm. And then my friend Eddie, who's an NYPD cop, came down to see him because my father was afraid to go to church. And Eddie comes down, and he's like, and Eddie's like a tough guy, cop, a real, like, organized crime bureau, etc. And he got him, he's like, Max, these fucking people made furniture out of people. They fucking had to go. You know? And my father's like, yeah. And he went to church for the first time in a long time.
And you tell about going out with your dad in his last days, and you went out to hit balls, just to show him that you. And he paced off one of your long hits.
Yeah, my father's the kind of guy who has no filter between his brain and his mouth. I think when you get shot and fight Nazis, you just don't feel like fucking around. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Am I serious? Have you ever? I don't know if you ever were in the military or fought a Nazi, but he's got shot, and he hated these people, and because they haunted him at night. Sometimes he would get drunk and do speeches, things he said to them, things he said to his men. He'd be drunk and in a blackout, and he'd just be doing this shit. And I remember I was 12 years old, and I saw him with a German Luger sitting in the living room, and I was like, "What are you doing with that gun?" Can I read it from the book? Oh, wait, I can't find it in there.
Oh.
It's in there. And he had a German Luger, and I was like, "Why do you have this gun?" And he said, "It's a German Luger, and I took it from one of them some bitches, and one of them Nazi some bitches." And he was hammered. I mean, he had like almost a fifth of gin in him. And he told me that when you take a gun from an officer, you're humiliating him. He told me he was up close with this SS officer, and the guy looked in his eyes, and he said, "I knew he would rape my mom, and he would fucking love it. I knew he wasn't a hired hand. I knew he wasn't going through a phase. I knew he was evil. Mm. He was in his cells evil. So I took his gun. Implicit in that is first he killed him. And then I was like, "Why do you still have it, and why do you hold it?" Because I'd seen him hold it before. He said, now, if you want to know why I'm a twisted guy, I'll tell you. I mean, why I was a scared kid, because I'm only 12, right? He said, because what I saw in his eyes, I took his gun because before I killed him, I wanted him to see what I had in my eyes. And I don't want him to ever forget it. And I'm not making this up. He said, if I see him in the afterlife, I'm killing him again. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what in the world possessed him? He never stopped thinking about them. Never. And then it's so great that he finally went to church. It's very important to him. Now, my father was the kind of guy who would walk up. I mean, literally, he would say things to people like, "You didn't turn out too good, did you, boy?" I mean, which I thought was enormously entertaining. One time, there was a salesman at our door. My father let him go through his spiel. My father paused for a second and went, "You ain't worth shit, are you, son?" You know. But at the end of his life, he had the nurse called us. I was doing Saturday Night Live with President Obama that night. And the nurse called me on my cell phone that day and said, your father will probably not be, sorry, I won't be around tomorrow. So me and my friend Addie, I call up and I said, I'm coming down right now. I can't tell it. It upsets me. He said, I want him. I can't do it.
It's in the book.
He said, I want him to do the show with a guy who might be a president. He took himself off his morphine, and so he wouldn't die, because he was afraid he'd go to sleep permanently.
Yeah.
So we get there the next day, and he has his war medals on his chest, and he was saying, I'm sorry I wasn't a better dad. Sorry. I just told him how proud I was. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. Yeah. That's what my friend Eddie was like, Max, there'd be no fucking Little League. No Little League. No baseball. There'd be no Yankees, no Little League. There'd be nothing if you didn't do that. Don't you see how God loves you? You know what I mean? He talked to him and talked to him and talked to him. And I thought to myself, the balls of this guy, the guts, to say on his deathbed, I stayed alive because I wanted to apologize. Right? And he, and people said to me, how do you stay alive? How did you stay alive? I thought I had him in me, you know? And that's how I stayed alive.
Great. And you're doing well now. This is a great book. I'd like to see your second book in a couple of years. And Pete Rose, should he be in the Hall of Fame? That's what I've been waiting
sorry,
all
I don't
night
have
to
a problem. I don't care if he gambled, but he bet on his own team?
They
Did he?
said he bet for his team, but it means if he didn't bet on his team one night, you know, the gamblers would say, oh, we better bet
right.
against him. So that's...
Let me just say, Fred.
I didn't want to be controversial here, Darrell.
I
didn't want to upset you.
I noticed the other day my socks didn't match.
Yeah.
And that was for like the third or fourth time this year. And I thought, I can't handle this fucking thing. That's complex.
Yeah.
I mean, what did he? I don't care.
Maybe you'll address...
I don't care if he cheated.
Maybe you'll address that in the next book. Pete Rose, in or out? All right, any last questions?
Yeah, Popeye having an orgasm.
Popeye, a great cartoon. Do we all remember Popeye? The sailor man, he inspired kids eating spinach. It inspired me as a kid. I said, I got to eat my spinach. And this was your first impression, right? How did it go? What was he doing?
I used to thrill the kids at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes with Popeye in bed with olive oil. It is the worst joke ever, and I'm ashamed of it. I'll say up front, I'm ashamed. It's the worst joke ever written.
Oh.
But it's like,
Oh, olive oil. Uck. 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 Uck.
sorry. I apologize.
That's a great climax to the evening. If I must say, that was a great, and I thank you, Darrell Hammond, for writing the book and coming out. Thank you for coming.